Hi, my name is Jerry, I'm a fantasy author, and in this short series of videos, I'm here to talk to you about the reality of being an author, what it means, how to get started, and what to expect. Now, after the first video, where I went over the somewhat abstract topic of the responsibilities of an author, I want to talk about something that's a lot closer to the ground, and that is developing your own writing process. Because a lot of people get into writing with the assumption that writing a book literally means just that, sitting down and writing out the actual words of the book. And any real author will tell you that this is not the case, provided they can stop laughing through their tears. In truth, as a practicing writer, you're going to spend a lot of time not actually on writing stories, but rather on figuring out how you can bring yourself to tell a complete story from beginning to end. Now, writing is an extremely personal and subjective process, and because of this, there are no silver bullets. There is no correct or foolproof way to do it, and anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something, usually a Skillshare subscription. For that same reason, I'm also not going to be able to reveal any great secrets in this video because there really aren't any. All I can do is offer you a list of topics that you'll probably need to consider as you set out on your own writer's journey. And the first thing I would tell you is that developing your writing process actually begins long before you even consider writing your own book, because it starts with reading. Reading a lot. Not just from your favorite author and not just in your favorite genre. Read at least one book in genres you don't think you're interested in. Read authors from different backgrounds and from different time periods and expose yourself to as many different styles as you can. If you lock yourself into one genre and only ever read books from that, at the risk of sounding topical, you're going to end up writing something that might as well have been written by an AI because you're not going to have any other frame of reference. If you have a broader horizon and more experience as a reader, there's a bigger chance that you'll be able to create something that's original and interesting. When people talk positively about my books, one of the things they appreciate about them is how they combine a fantasy setting with the atmosphere of 1950s noir and crime fiction, which happens to be one of my favorite genres to read. And more than that, reading a lot of books can help you get a much clearer idea of what are the stories that you would like to read but no one is telling, because that's going to be your story to tell. Okay, so let's say you have an idea for a book and now you want to get started. And the question is, how? Well, if you've been consuming writing advice for any amount of time, then there are two terms which I'm pretty sure you've already encountered, and these are planning and pantsing. Now, in case you're unfamiliar, pantsing refers to the phrase of flying by the seat of your pants, which is to say you just get started on your manuscript and you make up everything as you go from one paragraph to the next. By contrast, planning means that you lay out the plot of your story in advance and you consult that plan as you work on your manuscript. And the first thing I want to emphasize here is that this is not a strict binary. Some people are full-on pantsers who can never do any planning to begin with. Some people are technically planners because they write one page of bullet points that they occasionally look at, but generally make up all the connective tissue on the spot. Some people like to write post-its on a whiteboard, and then there are people like me. I'm not sure if I've told you this already or if you've noticed, but I am very analytical, and as such, I'm an exceptionally methodical planner. My outlining process goes through 4 stages, which I have numbered 0 to 3. Level 0 is literally just me scribbling all over a notebook with arrows pointing every which way as I try to establish the basic chain of events and what needs to happen and in what order, and how everything hangs together. Level 1 is a 1-page Wikipedia synopsis of the plot, which is kind of my first time of writing out the overall story from beginning to end. Once I'm satisfied with that, I move on to level 2, which is where I break up the story into parts and chapters and produce the level 2 outline, which is 1 paragraph per chapter. This is arguably the hardest and longest and most convoluted part of the entire planning process, because this is essentially the part where I have to write the entire story in my head. There is a lot of going back and forth and a lot of changes as I figure out which chapter should be in which POV, when each character arc or when each subplot needs to be introduced and resolved. And as I make all these changes, having this high-level overview helps me decide that if I make a change here, how does that cascade into the preceding or following chapters? Then, once I have that, I can move on to level 3, which is 1 page per chapter. Now at this point, I'm writing actual lines of dialogue or snippets of description, which may or may not make it into the finished book, but nonetheless, they help me get a better idea of the emotional beats of each scene. Then, with the level 3 outline in hand, I move on to the manuscript proper. Now at this point, I can still make changes, and often do, even after I'm finished, but again, as I make those changes, I can always cross-reference the outline and make sure that all consequences of each change are applied throughout the story. This method took me years to develop. An early version of it was what eventually allowed me to write my first publishable book, and I have been iterating on it ever since, and I have no trouble believing that when I start working on book 5 this summer, I'm going to tweak it even further. Now, if this sounds like something that might work for you, then by all means go ahead and try it, it's not patented. If it sounds like an actual, literal waking nightmare, then don't. The main thing I want you to take away is to prepare yourself for a lot of trial and error, and more importantly, to pay attention to yourself along the way. Do you feel comfortable with your own process? Do you feel that it is helping you or holding you back? And if it is holding you back, how do you think it needs to change? If you cannot bring yourself to finish a manuscript, that does not mean you have failed as a writer. It just means that's not how your brain works. Okay, so you have an idea for a book, you may or may not have an outline. Now it's time to start the manuscript. Now, there is a very frequently repeated approach, which is that your first draft is something that you just need to get out of your system. Don't worry about style, don't worry about consistency, don't even worry about plot holes or how you get a plot from A to B. Just write some filler like somehow they get a spaceship, and whatever you do, do not edit as you go, because you'll just get lost in the weeds polishing something that you're gonna rewrite anyway. It is almost like Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, where if you look back, you are lost. I have tried this, it didn't work for me. But that being said, I would still recommend that you try this first, because as much of a cliche as it sounds, very often the thing that holds people back from finishing their first novel is simply that they don't actually believe that they can do it. Having a complete first draft in your hands, no matter how rough it is, can give you that sense of accomplishment of, wow, I have just written a complete novel-length story from beginning to end. And very often that boost of motivation is exactly what you need as you go into the long and arduous process of editing. But still, I want to emphasize there are no silver bullets. So if you are not comfortable with this approach, don't stick to it just because everyone keeps telling you to do so. By all means, take the time to figure out your own approach at your own pace. And if you want to try editing as you go, then by all means try it. Just be mindful that yes, it can lead to you getting lost in those weeds. Oh, but what if you can't finish your first draft? What if you get stuck? What indeed if you are stricken down by that mythical curse known as writer's block? As with the first draft, there is a very popular and often repeated attitude, which is that when you get writer's block, you just need to stop whining and power through it. And my issue with this is that it ignores the fact that writer's block is a symptom, not a disease. If you get stuck in your writing process, that is not the problem, that is the outcome of some other problem, which is the one you need to solve. Now, admittedly, this underlying problem does very often stem from your own expectations. And what I mean is that in the minds of a lot of people, the way writing works is that you get inspired and then you write. But in reality, it's the other way around. Yes, inspiration can come out of nowhere, but 99% of the time, it comes while you are writing because you just need to be in that writing mindset. So yes, in the cases where you are stuck because you just don't feel like writing, then the best thing you can do is to sit down in front of a computer and get typing, not because you're a lazy whiner, but simply because you need to get those writing gears turning. However, that is not the only reason why you might get stuck. For example, you might get stuck because you don't know what should happen next, or you have multiple ideas and you can't decide which one to choose. In this case, it could be helpful to do some light, partial outlining as you explore different possibilities and then go with the one that feels best for your story. And if you find that this is something that happens regularly, then it might also be useful to rethink your process and maybe incorporate more planning. Or you might get stuck because you're afraid of imperfection. You don't want to write and rewrite the same description over and over. You want to get it right the first time. This is definitely something that I do, especially when I'm starting a new chapter and I need to set the scene. I will easily spend 20 to 30 minutes just sitting there looking for that perfect hook. However, what I have to emphasize in my case is that I have a lot of practice, I'm familiar with a lot of techniques, some of which I shared in my previous series, and also I have a very clear perspective as an author, so when I look for that perfect hook, I usually know what I'm after. But if you aren't there yet, then the best choice for you might in fact be to commit to trial and error, and again, pay attention to yourself. What is it that you don't like about the ones that you end up discarding? What is it that's missing? And be mindful of your iterations so that you can incorporate those experiences in your future writing. Or you might just have writer's block because you believe the hype. Writer's block is such a ubiquitous concept. Most of us hear about it before we even consider writing a novel. And so with that in mind, it's not difficult to go into your first or second or 10th project, half expecting it to strike at any point and then going full-on Lady of Shalott when it does. The truth is, if no one told you that writer's block was a thing, then you would see it for what it is, which is just you having a bad day. So figure out why you're having a bad day and try to fix that. So, what do you think? Was any of that useful? Was there something I missed? Was there something I should have talked more about? By all means, let me know in the comments, and until next time, stay tuned.